Thank you very much to Lee for that introduction, and Scott, and all of you that have come out to this occasion. Let me say, when I was told that we were coming to UNM for a Black History program, first of all, I was so glad to see so many of you that are not black, because Black History Month is not for blacks only. This is a time that we all should celebrate what America did through the black experience and all learn from that. And I must say that I asked the question, I said, well, how many blacks are in Albuquerque? And they told me about 3%. I said, well, that is better. I once spoke in a college in Vermont. And when I landed and the students picked me up at the airport, I said, well, let me ask you before we get to the campus, how many black students do you have? And the president of the student union said, well, sir, we have 12. I said, well, how many students do you have? He says, about 3,000. I said, out of 3,000 students, you only have 12 black students? He said, that's correct. I said, that's tokenism. He says, well, actually, it's the basketball team. So I want you to know you're doing better than they're doing in Vermont. Black History Month was founded because for so long, black history was omitted from American history. There are many that are students today that say, why do we need to have Black History Month, Women History Month, Hispanic History Month? The reason that we need to have it is because some in American history found a need to omit it. It is easy for those who have not been ill to ask, why do we need medicine? Because you never had the illness, you never needed the medicine. But when your contribution and your plight and your struggle was methodically eliminated, it also does something to your self-esteem, your self-concept, your self-definition. So we had to remedy what was done and omitted so that people could be healed of what became a malady in this country. So Black History was formed, and later Hispanic History Month and Women History Month, because some felt that omitting us from the American history was the right thing to do. Fact of the matter is, you can't give real American history without giving all of our history. Now, part of it is ugly. Part of it is bad. Part of it are things that are painful. But rather than run from that, we ought to be able to discuss those things, to see how far we came, to know that we can finish the journey if we understand how far we've already come. Many of us want the glory without the story. You can't really celebrate the American glory if you alter and distort the American story. Because the story is, yes, America made a lot of mistakes. The glory is that America grew and corrected some of them And the glory is that today we still have some correcting to do. But if we understand how far we came, we can understand with that same determination where we could go. This country, the black experience started where there was chattel slavery. We were property. We had no rights that anyone was bound to respect. It was against the law for us to even name our children after us. Against the law to marry. Against the law to read and write. Whites were prosecuted and even some killed if they taught blacks how to read and write. We came from that position to a movement to abolish slavery, the abolitionists. The abolitionists were formed by whites. And then blacks, as they broke out of slavery, namely Frederick Douglass, joined the abolitionist movement. The fight for right in this country, the fight for civil rights and human rights has never been just as simple as black and white. It was always right and wrong. There were always whites that would fight in the struggle, and there were always blacks that would adjust and say, don't fight, let's leave things the way they are. Even in my time, there were always some whites that would march with us, and there were always some blacks that said, y'all out there causing trouble. And then when we got the jobs, they were the first ones coming in to get the jobs after we won the fight that they never participated in. I tell that because many of us today have a sanitized version of history. Young people are made to believe that everyone was involved in the struggle. That is not true. Most struggles were the minority that fought on behalf of the majority. Dr. King, the greatest activist in American history, and maybe in world history, never had the majority of blacks or whites with him. When he marched in the famous march from Selma to Montgomery that led to the Voting Rights Act of '65, at its height, there were only 20,000 people. There was never a million-man march till '95. Dr. King was killed in '68. So many of your grandparents that say they marched with Dr. King are lying. Just like everywhere I go. I landed last night in Albuquerque. A lady shook my hand in the airport, said, I voted for you, Reverend Al, for president. Most people that tell me that are lying. Because if all of those people that voted for me, we'd be having this meeting in the West Wing of the White House. The reason it's important to straighten that out is because many of you that have a passion to do things think you need a huge crowd to do it. When the fact of the matter is it was always a small group that started and built up and paid the price for the men. So you had a small group of abolitionists, William Jennings Bryan and others, that fought to make slavery illegal. They built the momentum of that movement till it led to the Emancipation Proclamation. Then from Reconstruction, the fight to make sure that we had the right to vote, the fight on women's suffrage, the fight for labor rights, all of that a small group that built up. Don't ever be afraid to be part of a small minority. If you have right on your side, right will make room for you. Because in the end, that's where history been. My second point is that you cannot fight for the right of human rights or civil rights and limit it to just your group. human rights and civil rights of only your group is in fact to replace those that you're fighting rather than be an alternative to those. So civil rights is for blacks, but it's also for immigrants. It is also for women. It is also for gays and lesbians. You can't say free me, but it's all right to discriminate against others. Even if you disagree with others, you must fight for their right to be. Otherwise, you give people the authority to oppress you. So as we have this discussion about civil rights today, the civil rights of today is different than it was in the 20th century, but it's also the same. It's different in the sense that you have different manifestations of bias and different manifestations of what is discriminatory. It's the same because it is the same spirit and attitude that some feel that based on who they are superior to others based on who they are. And this feeling of supremacy is wicked and wrong. It must be resisted by all of us collectively. The story of blacks in America is the example of those that struggled and successfully was able to fight that. That is why black history is for everybody. To think that we've gone from legal illiteracy to where we are today should inspire every group in America to know that if you stand up and fight for what's right, you can win. I heard the young man when I arrived that was doing the welcome talking about President Obama. I remember when in January of 2009, I flew into Washington 2 or 3 days before the inauguration to speak at some of the pre-inaugural events. And I remember there was a young white brother that was getting off the flight I was on. And he said, "Reverend Al," I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Glad to meet you." I said, "Glad to meet you." He says, "It's going to be a great day." I said, "Yes, it will." He said, "And you know what really touched me?" I said, "What is that?" He said, "I read in the paper that then Senator Obama is going to be sworn in for president in 3 days. And he's going to be sworn in with his hand on Abe Lincoln's Bible." He said, "That really got to me." I said, "Well, you know, it gets to me too for a different reason." He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "What you may not know is that when Abe Lincoln had his hand on that Bible, it was against the law for my people to even be able to read that Bible. And to think that we've gone from false legal illiteracy to where in 3 nights a black family will go up to Lincoln's bedroom to bed, shows you how far we brought this country and brought these communities.